former FAST team manager, but now our financial services project lead. Been working very closely with Lorena for the past year plus to get where we are today. And then, of course, also Chris Dimitriadis, who's now the FAST team manager and has also been a huge part of the project team. We also have Katie Babcock, who is Easy's communications advisor. And also, it looks like we are up to 97 people. So one other thing, too, is that we are going to record this session. In fact, I see it being recorded now, and we'll be posting this on the Easy website after this presentation. Okay, so I'll keep going. So again, from an objective perspective, we are looking to give you a bit of a background on the SAP modernization program, and specifically where we are with the current phase, the S/4HANA migration project. We will then dive deeper into phase 3 and give you a bit of an idea of what to expect in the coming weeks and months. And then last but not least, we'll give you an idea of the training and support that will be available to the university folks. So that's today's, or rather today's objectives. So next up, just some program background. So as some of you may know, the university runs its enterprise resource planning, or its administrative management system, as it's called here at the university, primarily on the SAP platform. This SAP platform, starting with the finance system, and I'll get my nifty little laser printer going here, FIS, as it's called at the university, went live in 1995, and I'm sure a good number of people on this call may have been part of that original implementation. Then came the fund management and also the research administration systems. So you have what's known as FM over here, research and donations, coming in 1995. And then the back-end research administration system, which is called RIS at the university, which sits in AMS. That went live in 1996. This was custom built by the university before SAP released its module called Grants Management. So the university kind of was, innovating there and decided to build something in-house. HRIS came in 1998. So it was probably a very busy time in the mid to late 90s here at the university. And then student accounts went live with the student lifecycle management application with integration to the student system ROSI that many of you might know. So I was the project manager for this here as well. And also this, the integration with the ROSI system. I was not the project manager back in 1998, but I was the project manager when we migrated that entire thing to a Java based environment, which was a huge undertaking. So a lot of movement happening here. For those of you who might know the peak summer volume when all the students are doing their add drop debits and credits with the fees calculation, there are huge volumes of data that come into student accounts and then get passed into FIS. A lot of integration there. Then, of course, from a procurement perspective, I believe this was probably in the early 2010s, early to mid 2010s, USource went live, which integrates with AMS. And then we have a whole bunch of cloud applications. So there's Kronos for timekeeping, JDX, which is the job description expert for USW. There's TrueBlue, the recognition system. There's Cority, which I believe is environmental health and safety. And then you'll see that these two here, Taleo and Halogen, were struck through. They originally did integrate, but they've been replaced. So a lot of stuff happening here. Now, the interesting thing is that AMS, as you currently know it, which houses all these applications or modules here, SAP has said we will no longer be providing support on this beyond 2025. There's been a bit of little wiggle room on that date. It may have been officially extended to 2027, but I'm not 100% sure of that. But basically, SAP has said, you need to move to our new platform, ASAP, which is called S4HANA. And that's why we're here today. So with that in mind, the university signed a new contract with SAP to up only AMS, but a bunch of other components within the SAP space, and I'll provide some more details on that shortly. So, some numbers here, lots of customization at the university, big centralized environment, lots of integration points or interfaces, as we call it, to all these other, SAP systems or non-SAP systems. Lots of different production, testing, and development systems as well. So that's what we mean by instances, and a big production database. So some big numbers there for a big institution. So with that in mind, if we dive a little deeper on the program work streams, you can see this first one, which I was the project manager for, which is SuccessFactors, an SAP cloud-based solution, which consists of a whole bunch of different HR modules or talent management modules. You can see more folks are joining. Just going to let them into the session. So in fall of last year, actually around a year ago, just over a year ago, we went live with the staff learning management system, or the SuccessFactors LMS as it's called. We also went live with performance and goals, which is also a SuccessFactors module. And then in July of this year, we went live with SuccessFactors recruiting. So you can see that Halogen and Taleo, those have been replaced by this SAP cloud solution called SuccessFactors, which has all these different modules. In terms of what's next, there's talk with the HR and equity folks of onboarding potentially, which is another module. Also, a lot of interest in succession planning as another module. And then eventually, there will be Employee Central, which is a really large module, which will replace big chunks of HRIS as you currently know it. But that's not going to happen for at least probably 2 to 3 years. It will be a whole new RFP process, new vendor. For this, we work very closely with Deloitte. Next up, this is the reason we're here today, is taking AMS, and in particular the FIS component, and migrating that to S4HANA, which is that latest and greatest release from SAP. So on that front, we are taking the concept of customers, vendors, employees, and they move to this one object SAP language, which is called the business partner. And one key point to note here is that this S4HANA migration project is primarily a technical migration project with overall low change impact. There are some groups that are affected by this change to business partner, and they are well aware of this. But for most folks across the university, this is something that's happening under the hood. Also, the database upon which AMS today currently sits moves from an IBM database called DB2 to something called HANA. And this is an acronym for something technical. I won't bore you with the details, but long story short, this is a quote unquote revolutionary new database technology, which really lays the foundation for future improvements at the university in terms of reporting speed, transactional speed, and so on. So this is pretty exciting for the university folks in the coming years. We also did a bunch of code cleanup. As you saw in that previous slide, these systems have been in place since the mid-90s. Lots of things have happened in those 20 plus years. So there was a big code cleanup exercise to make sure that the university's custom code works on this new HANA database. And then where possible and where it made sense, time permitting, we optimized some business processes and in some cases enabled new technology. I'll speak to that in greater detail. So this one is really why we're gathered here today. And then there are other systems at the university that will move to this HANA database, but those are coming in the future. And then last but not least, this is a project that has actually been closed. We took all of your SAP systems at the university, and we moved that from your St. George data center into a Microsoft Azure data center on Front Street. And we've seen a lot of improvements under the hood as a result of that, as you can see here. But from an end user perspective, you may not perceive this as much, other than your systems may be a bit more reliable, secure, and in some cases, for example, payroll, we're seeing much better performance. That's where we are in terms of the overall SAP modernization program. Now, I mentioned that with this move to S/4HANA, it really lays the technical foundation to drive more innovation and more value in the SAP environment at the university. So you see a lot of this here. I mean, this is SuccessFactors up here. So a good chunk of this is actually live. So some of you may be, submitting your performance goals, doing your performance appraisals, taking learning courses, doing recruiting type stuff in here. So this is a very classic or modern classic. It's a bit of a paradox. SAP user experience for web-based applications. You see these tiles here. That's very typical to SAP modern web applications. You can see a little bit of university branding. And then over here, we see this is actually a screenshot, which most of you probably will never have access to, but this is really the Microsoft Azure cloud. And you can see all these, technical things that get the Easy team and others quite excited, like resource security hygiene. Great, looks wonderful. So that's kind of the cloud piece. Down here on the research front, they are reskinning or rebuilding a bunch of their custom applications using these new web technologies that the move to S/4HANA gives us. And then also from a finance perspective, many of you may know the expense reimbursement and direct deposit app on the web. We are reskinning or rewriting that using these more modern SAP technologies, but that won't come until early next year at the earliest. So that just kind of gives you a bit of a visual idea of these different program work streams and what this move to S/4HANA will allow the university to do in the coming months and years. So from a finance perspective, again, the vision is to evolve these systems over time. We have that first work stream, which is really a technical migration to S/4HANA. So we get improved performance with that HANA database. We are also optimizing some FIS pain points and business processes. You can see some examples there. And then there is a parallel work stream. So this first one goes live, as many of you may already know, Tuesday, November 3rd. But then there's the second work stream, which goes November 2020 and beyond, where we leverage some of those more modern SAP technologies to provide more value to the university. So there are those web application tiles, and there are all these new analytics tools that come up, which folks are pretty excited about. So timeline, this is where we are. We're really in final preparation right now in the lead up to our Tuesday, November 3rd go live. Many of you have likely seen those AMS listservs, which speak to some of the outage periods and the go live that's going to happen on Tuesday, November 3rd. If not, feel free to reach out and we can forward any of those communications to you. But really, this project kicked off in fall of last year. This was our original project schedule. There's been a lot of preparation, a lot of design, or what we call a blueprint. a lot of build, or what we call realization in SAP terminology, a lot of testing, which some of the folks on this call may have been a part of, a lot of simulation or practice of our go live, and we are really just everyone's hunkering down and getting ready for our early November go live. So next up, we'd like to speak to some of the major changes. And again, this is primarily a technical migration project with overall low change impact, but there are some. So I'm going to pass it over to Chris Dimitriadis, who's going to run us through the first two changes.
Thank you, Philip. Just before we do that, I do see that there's a question in the chat from Melissa Tetley that maybe you want to address. It's when do you expect the analytics portion to be released?
That's a great question. So as it currently stands, our implementation partner, Epiuse, owes or is contractually obligated to provide some of those embedded analytics. I would estimate that at some point in the first quarter or second quarter of next year, but we haven't really done or spent significant time on requirements gathering or any design from an analytics perspective. But there may be something SAP standard, which is easy to deliver out of the box, which could be of value to the university in the first or second quarter of next year. If there are more unique requirements and something that requires a more customized approach, then that will likely take a little bit longer.
Okay. So yeah, I'll speak to this slide here, and it's titled Major Changes, and it relates to the theme that we're going to be using when we go live with S4HANA, or you may be using already. The major change really is that the Enjoy theme that many people were using or currently using under ECC, SAP has basically that it's no longer going to be available when we go to the S4HANA platform. So the major change really is that we had to move from the Enjoy theme to a new theme. We looked at a couple options and settled on the Blue Crystal theme, as it was one, the most stable, and two, the most really disruptive from an end user perspective. So many of you will likely already have migrated over to the Blue Crystal theme. I know there was some communication and some information out a month or two ago of moving over to this. But the key thing here is to ensure that you are on the correct GUI and on the correct theme of Blue Crystal. On the right there, you can see a screenshot. That is the Blue Crystal theme. And as you can see, it's quite similar to what we have in Enjoy in terms of features. There are a few small differences, and we do have a link there that has a quick comparison of the Enjoy versus the Blue Crystal, but really it's cosmetic in nature, but it was a requirement moving forward into the S4HANA world to be on a theme that was going to be supported on that platform. So you shouldn't see too much change. You should be able to jump into that theme and continue to work as you normally do. But if you want to just see a quick comparison, you can go to that link that we've put up there to give you kind of a before and after side of things. So Philip, I think that was it on that slide. The next item, and Philip touched on this, was the concept of business partner that's been introduced by SAP and is a requirement of moving over to S4HANA. As the first point there indicates, this is a limited impact and limited in terms of who it's going to kind of create more of an impact for. And it's really anyone that might be on the call who creates or changes customer or vendor master record accounts. If that's something you're involved in, then you've likely already heard about this or will be shortly. But we have migrated our data over to this new business partner, and there is a new process for creating and changing customers. But a key point for most people who don't get involved in that is that there is no change when processing your transactions. If you're processing an invoice, a purchase order, and you would normally enter your vendor account, that's exactly what you'll do come November 3rd and going forward. So from a transactional perspective, there is really no change in processing transactions when you go in. If you are creating business partners, the screen on the right is a custom transaction that we've developed here at U of T with the Easy Group and the partner Epiuse to simplify the process of creating customers and vendors. And this is a custom front end screen that will help those users that are involved in creating or updating customers. And it's been tested and quite a process to develop, but it really does simplify the process. The only other area where end users that don't create or change business partners might see a difference or will see a difference is if they decide to go in and display a vendor master record or customer master record. This information will now be displayed through the business partner display transaction. So if you've ever gone in to look at a vendor master record, it will look different. The data that we have within the business partner will all have moved over and be part of that, but it will be a different look and feel and transaction that displays that vendor master record information. So one example of that is if you are processing an invoice, there is the option on the right-hand side of the screen to look at the master record if you choose to. Most people will just look at the address and name and verify that it's the right vendor, but you could, in that instance, drill down and look at the vendor master record. And that if you do that and choose to do that, it will look a little different than what you have now. So really summary here is if you don't create or change vendors, your processing really won't change with respect to business partner. But if you do, we've put processes in place to simplify the creation, and we have documentation available on change and create and display.
All right. So we'll keep going. Next up, we have, oh, bit of an echo. Just gonna, 1 second, please. Okay, there we go. All right, next up is the elimination of the RPT clone. Many of you may have seen the AMS listserv that went out regarding this, but just a bit of background on RPT clone. I believe it's been around for quite some time. And one of the key drivers way back when was when AMS just really did not have enough horsepower, given computing power at that time, where users could run their reports while day-to-day operations were happening. So this whole notion of the RPT clone, that read-only view of AMS data from the previous day, evolved or developed rather. And then, with the passing years, additional use cases evolved as a result of that. But with this in mind, with the move to the S/4HANA platform, this is not a viable approach per our technical experts. So we have provided or put together a new solution, which is different in that it will be web-based. So again, you see these, and I mentioned earlier, modern SAP, web-based technology has this concept of these tiles, right, which you can see here. So that what you see on the screen was really just a what we call in IT land a proof of concept to see if the idea would work, which we reviewed with folks from business. But you see these reports here, and in this example here, we've taken 5 HR reports, which we believed were heavily used or were used in the RPT clone, and then also 5 finance reports, which were also used on the RPT clone. And of course, there are likely many others. This was just to prove that the concept would work. But we have this new web portal, which in SAP language is called the Fiori Launchpad. So this is the Fiori Launchpad here, your University Fiori Launchpad. And if you click on one of these tiles, it will present a view of the vacation projection report. So there will be more details coming on this. The user experience will be a bit different. Chris was speaking of the Blue Crystal theme. This will use a bit of a bigger change theme called Belize in this web portal only. So users will log in via their UTOR ID, and then they can get to this web portal called the Fiori Launchpad, and they can run these reports, which pulls AMS data. And the idea is that primarily we will give users the ability to use this web-based reporting solution during typical AMS downtime or lockout periods. So we know, for example, when payroll is running, or fiscal month end, or fiscal year end, or the holiday break. Typically, folks are locked out of AMS. They can't get into AMS. But in this new world, which we expect to be able to release by the holiday break of this year, folks will be able to come in to this web portal, log in with their UTOR ID password, and then run these reports here and possibly others. But we will be working over the coming weeks and months to get this new solution in place for the 2020 holiday break. So more details to come on this. This solution here will not be part of the early November S/4HANA migration go live. Okay. So that's a change there. I'm going to keep going because we're at 12:30. And then the fourth change, which is expected to come in early 2021, is the new ERDD on the web. So expense and reimbursement direct deposit app on the web, which you can access via the university's other web portal, which has ESS, MSS, the custom research applications, and also that older version of ERDD on the web. So the implementation partner EPI is redesigning and rebuilding this with fast team support. And we're looking to provide a more modernized user experience using the latest SAP web technologies. And also with this new platform, this application should be responsive to your screen device. So if you access it via your iPad or your iPhone, it should resize itself and fit the screen a lot better than the older version. So that's coming in early 2021, not part of our November go live of this year. Last but not least, and I know we're 1 minute over, I'll turn it over to Chris D, and he'll walk us through the training and support.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, so we've been talking here a little bit about the major changes and so on. There are other kind of minor changes or adjustments that are coming with the S/4HANA migration, and we've been working diligently with test groups and the fast team testing and some user acceptance testing to identify these and try and categorize all the changes that you might see and provide some documentation and support on those items. And there's some information sessions that will be coming up or that we're going to be hosting on the 27th, 29th, and the 4th, and there'll be some details coming out. They will be online, of course. And we'll go through some of the more detailed changes that you might find when you get into the S/4HANA environment in November. So that's part of what those sessions are, is take just a little more granular dive into some of the changes and give you an idea of what's coming. We will also have a dedicated S/4HANA page on our Financial Services Department website, which will kind of consolidate all the information and documentation we've prepared to help kind of guide you through the changes that may come. And all our reference guides that hopefully some of you have come to know and love in our simulations, they're being updated to reflect any S/4HANA changes that have impacted those transactions, reports, any type of items that we've kind of documented. We want those to be current, so when you use our Knowledge Center or our simulations, that you see what you're going to get in the S/4HANA world as best as we can. And as always, our ongoing support will be available through your FAST team faculty representatives and our general FAST help mailbox. There will be some more communication coming out in terms of a broader overall support plan, as there's many different areas that are helping us support this migration. The EZ team, our EPIU's partner. So we'll have a little more information on the full kind of support package. But as always, if you don't know where to go, the FAST team is available to help and guide in the right direction.
Thanks, Chris. So I know we're a few minutes over, but I will open it up to anyone on the call. Were there any questions, comments, anything requiring clarification? I saw a question from Wilson Mark in the chat, but did anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up on this call? All right. Going once. Going
We
twice.
We got a very helpful overview from Melissa. Thank you, Melissa.
Okay. Oh, nice for the comment. All right. Well, I hope everyone has some time to enjoy their lunch, and I'd like to thank you for the great turnout today, almost 100 people, and kindly ask that you look for some of the communications that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks or so. Thank you very much.